The 13th ranked Miami Hurricanes got off their season to a great start with a 101-60 win over NJIT. Certainly they were heavy favorites in this one, but they looked great. You know, they had that big win, but also a lot of guys stepped up and played well. I thought they did a lot of things, a lot of positive things in this one that I want to get into, especially with some of these top players, with these guys in the starting lineup, but also some bench guys impressed me as well. But first I want to talk about Grant Billmeyer. The head coach of NJIT was very complimentary in his post-game remarks about the Hurricanes, and there were a couple things that stood out. And first off, he felt like, now this is a guy in his first season here as the head coach, but he's a former assistant at Maryland and also, you know, Seton Hall as well. So he knows a lot of these guys from recruiting them or just very aware of Miami, as most programs are, because of Miami's deep run last year into the Final Four. A lot of eyes on Miami, and people are very well aware of this program. So he said he feels like, you know, 13th ranked team in the country, feels like that's a little too low for them. He feels like they're a much better team than that. So Miami fans should be excited to hear that. And then also too, he felt like, just from a scouting report standpoint, he felt like with their personnel that he really feels like they just got a lot of really good players, a lot of guys offensively that can do a lot of things, and that's what we saw tonight. And he said it really starts with Nigel Pack, and I find that to be interesting because I think maybe other people would point to maybe Norchad Omier, or even I know we're all expecting a guy like Wooga Poplar to have a big game, a big season, and he had that big game today, 21 points, 8 of 16 shooting, but he really said, that coach said that it feels like it starts with Nigel, and Nigel only had 8 points, but he had 9 assists, so that's great to see. So even if his shots aren't falling, you know, they can still have a very successful offense. Miami jumped out to a 22-9 start, and that was because they came out with a good energy, you know, starting the season. You know, it wasn't a huge crowd, obviously not playing a big opponent, but they came out firing there, and Norchad Omier deserves a lot of credit for that. 11 points. All 4 of his baskets that he made during that stretch were really impressive. So he had made 2 3-pointers. He handled the ball and moved the ball up court and finished there in transition. He also had a nice drive from the paint, from the top of the key where he was fouled and made a free throw. So he was great. 20 points, 10 rebounds. Matthew Cleveland looked good. The 16 points, 10 rebounds. The 4 assists I found to be noteworthy. And a couple things that stood out to me with his assist was, you know, I was watching him in pregame. If you saw my notes on the live updates thread on InsideTheU.com, I talked about watching Matt during his pregame shooting, you know, before the game started, really working on some corner 3 stuff. And so I was curious to see how it would translate into the game. And he certainly was in that spot. He was in the corner 3 quite a bit. But when he got the ball, and there were times maybe he could have forced the 3 there, but he took a couple dribbles in and either looked for a basket to drive himself and finish at the rim, or, and this is where the assist came in, he would dish it off to his teammates, and I thought that was great. So a good sign that Matt's providing some good stuff. 16, 10, and 4. You certainly would like to have that. So I thought he looked good in his debut. Some other guys in their debuts, a little up and down. I thought Mike Nawako off the bench looked good, making baskets. He had a nice finish there with dunks, and coach talked about how he just dunks with ease. And Nawako and then Keyshawn George were the first 2 guys off the bench for Miami, 2 freshmen, and Keyshawn George didn't have the impact that I thought he would make in the opener. He looked good in the exhibition, looked good in preseason practices, and coach said that, you know, they're still going to work with him in terms of trying to determine his best role offensively and defensively. So it could be just something to kind of monitor, something to really watch for. He's a ball handling 6'8" guy, but also they have Bensley Joseph and Nigel Pack to handle the point. So it'll just be interesting to see where Keyshawn, you know, how he kind of integrates in. And one thing coach has said about Keyshawn is he does a very good job of being a complementary piece, and certainly tonight they didn't need a lot of production from him. And I felt like there were some times where either he turned the ball over or he just didn't take shots where I think he could have. So I think he'll be more aggressive moving forward. And Miami's next game against UCF will certainly be an exciting one from a rivalry standpoint in state. But Miami's going to drop the banner. The Final Four banner behind me is going. They're going to have a ceremony before the game, so that'll be great. Hopefully, a lot of fans show up for that. But you know, I'm very curious to see how kind of Keyshawn's role goes moving forward and just how he'll be used. But another guy off the bench I thought looked great, and that's AJ Casey. You know, with Mike coming in and kind of wondering where AJ's going to fit in terms of his minutes off the bench as a big. And AJ did a great job, and a couple things stand out to me. Not only was his finish, and you see the points if you look at the box score, he did make a couple baskets, but the offensive rebounds, really keeping plays alive, having that activity level up, with 3 offensive boards. I think that's great, and that's what AJ needs to bring. That's what all these guys need to bring, something off the bench, something productive. It doesn't always have to be scoring, but certainly making plays and being a plus player when you're on the court, whatever that might be, and however you can help the team, because oftentimes you're not always playing with the rest of the reserves. So maybe there's other starters out there that you want to, when I talked about complimentary piece with Keyshawn, the other bench guys can play off them as well. And also it's an opportunity to be productive. Maybe you're not going to get plays drawn up for you, but if you get that offensive rebound, you can certainly get the putback. So that was good to see from AJ. I like how he started. And then also we saw a little bit of Chris Watson, and then also Paul Jobé got in there. Ja'Kai Robinson there late too. So we got to see a lot of guys, all 11 scholarship players were on the court today. So that was good. Miami shoots over 50%. They make 12 3-pointers. I find the 12 3-pointers to be noteworthy because I do think Miami is going to be a good 3-point shooting team this year. They've got multiple guys that can make threes. I expect, Wooga Poplar, Nigel Pack, both those guys to really be, multiple. They'll average multiple threes a game. I think they can both be two threes a game or more. So that'll be something to watch for. I think Matthew Cleveland can contribute from the 3. We'll pay attention to his shooting percent. Norchad Omier, I said I think he's going to make some threes this year. He saw 2 tonight. And then Bensley Joseph, saw him make some threes. He can either spot up or he can kind of slide left or right, depending on if he needs to use his dribble to make threes. So I think those guys are all going to make threes. And I think that's going to be good. When you're playing undersized, you definitely want to spread the court and make as many outside shots as possible to either create driving lanes or more opportunities for other guys, either on slashes or drives or even just cuts away from the ball, because you're forcing teams to come out and guard you past the 3-point line. So that's great. And then we'll see if the bench guys can kind of provide some shooting off the bench. I think Keyshawn George is going to shoot at a high clip once he gets into a good rhythm of when to shoot and take shots and kind of how he fits in here. So that's just something I think Miami's going to be with this team. Again, 101 points. It's the 4th time under Jim Larrañaga in his 13th season that Miami goes over their 100 points. They did it in an exhibition game. So you're looking like a high-powered offensive team, which is great. And there were some key defensive things I thought Miami did a pretty good job of too. So Grant Bilmar, again, he said Miami doesn't have, essentially saying, not too many weaknesses on their personnel, on their scouting report. A lot of guys can fill it up, and that's what we saw tonight. So good start for Miami, 1-0. Big game against UCF coming up. Definitely let me know what you guys thought of this. Drop in the comments below. But thanks for watching, and stay tuned. Plenty of comments, plenty of content coming on InsideTheU.com and the channel. Looking forward to another exciting season of Miami basketball.